Good afternoon, everyone. We are very pleased to be here with you to talk about a special topic that we have been interested in, not only as the foreign languages teachers we are, but also as educators committed to inclusion and transformation. My name is Nayelis, and with my partner Carlos Caballero, we are going to present um, Global Citizenship Education in English Language Teaching Lessons, a framework for inclusive language learning in Colombia. So before starting, I'm going to walk you through today's agenda. We are going to start with a general overview of the global citizenship education. Then let's continue with the theoretical foundations of global citizenship education and its relationship to English language teaching. Then we're going to focus on the Colombian educational context to better understand what are the opportunities and the challenges that we face today. And we're going to present some strategies for integrating global citizenship education to English language teaching in our educational context. Finally, we're going to wrap up with some conclusions and then open the floor for questions and discussions. So let's start. Well, probably you are asking why we should address global citizenship education in the English language teaching process in our educational context. And well, it's vital to understand that in our increasingly and interconnecting fragile world, teaching a language can no longer be limited to teaching grammar and vocabulary as it's presented in many contexts or in many scholar establishments nowadays. So conversely, teaching a language must open doors to intercultural understanding, social awareness, and an active citizenship. Because in the end, teaching a language is not only teaching a way of communication, but also is a way of seeing the world, and our students deserve to be equipped with empathy, curiosity, and agency. In this way, the global citizenship education is presented as a transformative paradigm to face current world challenges. And, and probably you are asking, well, but what is the relationship between this notion or this approach with the English language teaching? And is that the English language classroom is a vehicle to promote holistically educated learners, and it's the appropriate place to do it, considering the intercultural nature of this type of courses. Well, let's go deep into the concepts of this study that are global citizenship education. Let's start with the global citizenship, which was defined by UNESCO in 2015 as a sense of belonging to a worldwide community, emphasizing interdependence across local, national, and international levels. In this way, it involves an awareness of global interconnectedness, cultural diversity, and a sense of responsibility to act in favor of social justice and sustainability. To achieve these notions of global citizenship, a structured education with clear objective is required. And it must be an education that can be applied across various fields of knowledge and that addresses political, curricular, and pedagogical implications. So global citizenship education has gained prominence as a response to globalization and interconnectedness, and it aims to address world issues such as environmental concerns, social justice, and human rights. Furthermore, the global citizenship education addresses to the 4.7 sustainability development goals, which refers to the promotion of a high quality education. But well, how can we implement global citizenship education in our lessons? According to UNESCO in 2015, there are three key dimensions that we need to take into account when integrated global citizenship education, and these are the cognitive, socio-emotional, and behavioral aspects. The first one refers to, to the fact of involving learners and helping them build knowledge and develop critical thinking skills about global issues. And it's about raising consciousness of social, environmental, and economic challenges that affect people both locally and globally. An example of its application in the English language courses can be like reading and discussing texts related to climate change, child labor, or migration, not only as a way to practice language, but also to engage with authentic and real world content that students can reflect and develop that awareness. But this cognitive aspect must be connected to the social-emotional one, which means a sense of belonging to humanity. Basically, this principle is related to the fact of having students develop attitudes, skills, and values of a shared humanity. And the final one, the behavioral, is is the ability to act ethically, responsibly, and with commitment at local, national, and international levels, which can be translated to about an awareness and some action that students from their classes can take in order to contribute to the construction of a better world. And well, what is the relationship between this education and the English language teaching? As I mentioned before, the English language classroom has been pointing out for being an ideal setting for incorporating this type of education due to its cross-natural nature. The English language classroom is presented as a space for dialogue, critical thinking, and intercultural exchange. And additionally, some research suggests that incorporating dialogic practices in English language teaching can enhance students' intercultural awareness and critical engagement with global issues.
Yeah, thank you. So, considering all these theoretical framework of what global citizenship education is and English language teaching integration, we have to see also the considerations of its implementation in the Colombian context. First, we have to consider that Colombia has historically been characterized by significant inequalities that manifest across all aspects of national life. This includes cultural, economic, and educational aspects at the same time, too. These reflect in all aspects, and especially they have been damaged after the COVID-19 pandemic, especially because school closures resulted in significant reduction in coverage. This affected academic performance in students, making the adaptation for education even more difficult and challenging for educators. This also reflects in other aspects. Thanks, Nayelis, if you can pass into the next one. Like, for example, how we can see English language education in Colombia. As we can see and as we have evidence, Saber 11 test demonstrated that public schools underperform compared to private institutions in the English language exam. And this gap was even broader when it was considered from urban to rural schools results. Now, these all demonstrates that Colombia still faces challenges when integrating the same high quality education levels from different institutions in different populations. There is an imbalance between all of these, and there persist curricular challenges in the ELT implementation in Colombia all alone. However, we have to see how we can integrate still with all these contexts into consideration the global citizenship education in the Colombian context. And we have to see, thanks Nayelis, if we can move on to the next one. Thank you. That we are going to consider three things. First one, it is curricular integration. Curricular integration is also divided into three different aspects. Remember that we want to achieve sustainable development goals for the 2030 agenda for the United Nations. And this is not about just teaching students of, of the foundations of these concepts, but also we need them to live in a society all together, in a society that is cohesive with one another. Now, the objective is that they can integrate all of these into the curricula. First, we need to achieve this via instructions. We need to make national policies aware of this. And at the same time, we have to go from the national level to the institutional level. It has been seen that the Colombian National Ministry of Education has implemented, not explicitly, sociocultural values that reflect at the same time the intentions of global citizenship education. However, there are still steps to take in regards of national schools implementation. Now, this has been seen in that context. We need to include instructions that align with these perspectives, and at the same time, it has to be implemented by teachers with materials. Evidence has demonstrated that materials doesn't implement current issues, real life context, and at the same time, we are hindering the opportunity to develop critical thinking, solidarity, empathy, and problem solving by dialogue from students. So this is very important to develop materials that make students working groups realize that they are part of a community and to develop these social competencies via or through the English language integration. And at the same time, we have to think of local context. Now, with the current trends of English of ELT, we have seen that there appears to have or to be more paradigms of language. For example, the global English language teaching. It is a perspective that integrates at the same time different values and perspectives. We cannot construct curriculum, we cannot create tendencies, we cannot have material and instructions if we don't consider local context. Because local context, they are the ones that are going to start as the base for students in social levels. So we consider that as a hierarchy from, like local levels to national to international. So if we don't consider local levels, we're failing students to realize or to understand social structures and hierarchies, and at the same time to position themselves in a level of society, which is very important. So this based on that, instruction materials and considering local context to create curriculum. Next, we go to the next part to implementing GC in the Colombian context for English language classes. And we have to change the paradigm. It has been seen also, and evidence demonstrates that still in the country and around the world, English teachers sometimes consider grammar-based approaches or just linguistic approaches as the ones that they work with. Now, this has, of course, validity, or it's logical because it has been also established that sometimes teachers and schools, they are not into changes. They are reluctant to change. So it is the reason why this happens. However, we have to include this based on basically these two things, critical pedagogy and dialogue. Because again, the classroom, our English classroom, it is a little society or little, real world context for students to be ready to participate in social clusters in social events and in the communities they belong to. We see under this global citizenship education the perspective that students are themselves already citizens that participate, make decisions, and are constantly involved in their communities. So it is very important to consider them this way. Now, we think of them as a way of deconstructing, reflecting, sorry, and thinking of social justice discussions. This is why it is important to consider local context, national context, and international context. Let's stop being afraid of talking about social issues. We need students to realize what is right and what is wrong through discussion. Critical pedagogy approaches are going to support this construction for us. We need to explore their identity because we want to foster student and civic agency in order to power them and to foster global interdependence. Again, the perspective of understanding that we all belong to the same world in little communities that are interdependent one another. And finally, this also comes with a transformation in the perspectives. We want to see that teachers were just not the usual instructors or linguistic facilitators, but we are here to facilitate and transform through dialogue. So this has to be done in, of course, in the English language teaching classes. Again, we have to center the class in the students, and we are just going to facilitate dialogue in order to construct this in our lessons, which is very important. And finally, in order to implement correctly, or one of the ways in which we can implement global citizenship education in the English language classes in Colombia, it is through community-based projects, which is in the next slide. So, wait a second. Thank you, Nayelis. If we can pass to the next one. Great. So, community-based projects. If we implement real situations, especially related to the community of students, or like in these three dimensions of hierarchy in society, students are going to be encouraged to first pursue their interests and develop relevant research questions. And as a result, we're going to have students that are capable of developing their soft skills while at the same time they develop their linguistic skills in English. So this is very relevant. If we ask them to participate with providing solutions for their community, for their city, for their country, for the planet, if we can have, for example, little United Nations, like practices, this can be very relevant for them at the same time. It is very relevant because these projects can connect students through challenging and especially authentic contexts. This is why previously we mentioned materials, because at the same time we need materials that are authentic, that give students real life perspective, and that actually get them to see English as something that they can use in everyday life as part of their regular basic activities. It is not just about them participating isolated learning English because it's relevant for a life that they don't have in this moment, but to encourage them, making them aware that the life that they have right now is the life that still goes on to the next steps, and they really attach to this. We have two examples of this. The first of those is the Acapulco, My Paradise in the World, which was a project that integrated the real life of students in order to provide solutions for their local community in Bucaramanga, in a very underserved and poor community. So in this way, students could produce solutions for the community, while at the same time they were learning and improving their English competences. And another example is a project called Living with the Virus, which helps students participate, developing their soft skills, while at the same time they narrated their perspectives from the pandemic produced by COVID-19 virus. So through these three things, curricular integration via instruction materials and teacher view perspectives and local context and critical pedagogy and dialogue, changing the way we see ourselves as teachers, integrating deconstructing and social justice discussions, and exploring own students' identities. And finally, all of this, we can do it through community-based projects in order to have them being critically aware and socially, of course, aware of injustices and thinking of them as global actors, advocates, and especially citizens with agency to their local communities. So we can conclude then here this with, of course, the final results here that we have, and is that the integration of GCED within the English language teaching, it presents a compelling pathway toward fostering inclusive, transformative, and especially socially responsive education in the language in the Colombian context. This is very important because again, let's remember we have a historically diverted country, and through these kind of approaches, we can have more closer perspective of what we need as society in order to understand the other, not as a different person, as a similar one for me. And finally, English classrooms can evolve into spaces where students develop linguistic competencies and cultivate global values such as solidarity, empathy, and civic engagement. All of these through, of course, the development of their skills like critical perspective, dialogue, and agency for them. So, well, this is it. Thank you very much for your participation, and we're expecting your questions in case you have. Thank you.
Thank you
Okay.
so much.
Thank you very much for your illustrating how language education can be a way for social transformation. Your framework provides a concrete step for educators seeking to integrate global citizenship into their practice while maintaining linguistic objectives. Now we have some questions here in the chat. I am going to read for you. The first one is, how can schools and educators effectively implement global citizenship education in their curriculum?
Yeah, thank you for that question from Angie. Yes, it is very important to consider first, we have to adapt our curricula into first local context. We have to see that we all have different necessities, and it will determine the objectives that we have because it varies from social group to social group. So the needs that I have in my private school are not the same as the ones that I have in my rural public school. So starting from that, we can start implementing more, like actual or closer curricula to the students and their needs. Secondly, of course, it is important to construct authentic material that reflects these perspectives and that actually encourage students to realize that what they are using in the English class is authentic, and at the same time it reflects what they are going to use the language for in actual social contexts. And finally, we have, of course, to encourage teacher formation, teacher training programs for transforming this perspective that we sometimes tend to have that are grammar-based.
Yes, of course, three very important aspects that you have mentioned. So here we have another question. Does global citizenship education help students develop critical thinking skills about global issues?
Yes, thank you. That's a very important question here because that's also another objective. or the objective of global citizenship education is not just that students are aware of the situation. It is not related to the cognitive aspect. We don't want them only to know, because it is just narrating or documenting news, but what they're going to do with it and how they relate that to maybe their local context, or how their local context is also involved in these global issues, how they see their lives affected by this, if that's the case, and also what they can do to construct maybe possible solutions, to construct maybe possible future outcomes, or think of different ways in which they can, as citizens, provide a better outcome for their society and for their community. So this is very important, again, to integrate. That's why we think of the integration of local context, authentic material, for students to actually reflect on that and realize on it. And finally, that's why we said that the integration of community-based projects would support this, because they have to, come up with possible solutions, or work on their own community, or situations that are related to it, especially because it's related, of course, at the same time with their interests.
Okay, and finally, I have the final question for you. What were the main challenges that you faced when introducing global citizenship themes to English language learners?
First, it is noticeable that even students, parents, teachers, and directors, they tend to still have diverse perspective of English. Either they see it as an opportunity for the future, or they see it as a way in which is just linguistically, which is grammar-based instructions, or just pronunciation, or just, linguistic characteristic of the language. But they don't tend to see it pretty much as a vehicle to the construction of different communities, of a way of integrating, as it has been evident that English as a lingua franca tends to still base the power language to communication in the world. So this is pretty much very difficult still, because again, we live in Colombia in a society that is very diverse, and it's very difficult at the same time to still think of the others. We still live in a very polarized world and a polarized country, in which we don't see the other as a similar one in which we can construct together, but tendencies are that they are enemies, or that they are just the opposite, and I don't work with them, I don't see how I can relate with them, and therefore I cannot construct a new society with them, but parallel to them. And of course, this perspective has to be changed at the same time in all members of the academic community.
Okay, dear Carlos and Nayelis, again, thank you very much for your presentation. And here you have a congratulation too in the chat. Please remember again that you can congratulate or ask your questions in the chat here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Azania, for having us here.
So much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.